Today, our guest's childhood trauma is every parent's worst nightmare. From surviving incest as a child to being a victim of rape as a teenager, Dr. Sarah Jefferis defied all the odds with great fortitude. Join us as we take a look into the traumatic past of the resilient Dr. Jefferis and what she is pursuing these days in coaching writers across all genres and disciplines to share their story with the world. Hello, welcome, Dr. Jefferis. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
So
Thank
happy
you
to be
for
here.
thank you for being here and dealing with my technical issues, but I'm so glad you're here.
It's
And
all
I am
good.
so excited to really just share your story with the world and show the resilience that is Dr. Jefferis. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to us, please?
So I am Dr. Jefferis. I am a mama of two fabulous teenage girls. I'm in
Mhm.
upstate New York. I'm a writer, an author, a speaker, and an
Wow.
editor and CEO of my own business called Right Now,
Okay.
where I coach clients to their next best sentence. So
Wow.
whether they're working on poems or essays or a novel or applications to graduate school or scholarships,
Yeah.
I work one-on-one with clients to get the project done.
All right. Wow, that's incredible.
Thanks.
That sounds like a great resource for a lot of people, and I wish I had that joy when I before I started my graduate journey, really. So
Yes.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. All right, so Sarah, let's go back a few years now, and let's just start at the very beginning of your story, where your world changed and your innocence as a child and all that you knew changed.
Yeah. That's a great beginning, right? And I was
Mhm.
thinking about that and I was like, well, how would I explain the beginning, right? Because I grew up in Southern Virginia and
Okay.
I didn't really have a name for what was happening to me as a child. And I think what's important to remember about trauma
Mm,
is that oftentimes as kids, we don't we don't know that it's trauma. We don't
right.
have an experience and then say,
Exactly.
"Oh, that was a trauma," 5
Right.
minutes later or 10 minutes
Right.
later. And it's really when we're adults
Uh-huh.
that we can sort of look back
Mm.
on that moment and
Hmm.
then say, "Wait a second. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Wait a second, that was messed up.
Absolutely.
Okay, wait a second, that was fucked up." It's where I was
Yeah.
going, and then I was like, "Oh, maybe I can't swear." Um,
Feel free.
really, in the moment when we're children, we just know that something feels uncomfortable or
Mhm.
wrong or awkward. Um,
Right.
and perhaps we even chew on our tongues because we can't quite say what it is that happened. Um,
Mhm.
and we understand, at least I did very early, um, that everyone had secrets
Yeah.
and that we were to keep those secrets
Mm,
to ourselves.
mm,
I feel very differently about secrets now as a mama and as an adult.
right.
But as a kid, I felt that way. I'd love to read you actually a poem from one of my first books that sort
Sure.
of explains some of that.
Okay.
The poem is called Asparagus,
Oh,
and it's from my first book, which is Forgetting the Salt.
okay.
Asparagus. At 7, I was sleepwalking. Mama found me at Amy's house down the block in my Garfield nightgown, afoot in the street, or under dogwoods, laughing,
Mm,
or at the blue laundromat where she worked. I'd inhale the bleach, fold and refold strangers' pants. Or the time she found me in my Tuesday panties when it was Friday, watching my nightgown shrink and tumble. It smelled of asparagus and semen.
mm,
Mama would walk me home, leave me on the couch for my brothers in the morning. Get up in the night, she'd say. Just get up. Go. Get up.
mhm,
How to tell her I'd be met by any one of them in the hall, the bath, how they twist my long hair, make me watch them pee. I can't kneel, can't clean the bottoms of toilets, can't even throw up in them. I would sleepwalk out of my twin bed, watch the roaches beheaded by the window box fan blades, trip over my stepfather's boxers on the
mm.
floor.
Oh my God. Wow. Oh.
So that's, the world that I grew up in Virginia was very contained and
Uh-huh.
private.
Wow.
But I used to sleepwalk as a kid, which I think is a result of sort of growing up
Hmm.
as a girl who was kind of shared by a bunch of men who were around her.
Oh my gosh. So,
I know
so
that poem is really intense. I just wanted to sort of,
very intense, very intense.
yeah,
But I thank you so much for just being vulnerable and putting pen to paper and writing that, because I feel like there's a lot of little girls out there, now grown women who will look back and hear this, and something is going to strike something within them. And I feel
yeah,
like it's a sad revelation.
yes.
Um, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you went through all that.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you. I've done a lot of therapy work and meditation and yoga, definitely yoga, and writing, of course. Writing is really the sort of space of healing for me to
mm,
work through all of those experiences I have. So, like, for example, right now,
mhm,
I can still kneel or
mm,
I can clean a toilet if I need to.
right,
But in that moment, the bathroom had its own sort of uncomfortability space
right.
for me.
Oh,
Um, yeah. But I really believe that writing is the thing that has helped me heal
mhm.
some of those incredible early experiences that unraveled my sense of self.
Oh, wow. That's I don't even have words for that. I am just stunned that, this would happen. And do you recall age-wise, where were you in maturity and age, and just, I mean, there's no maturity for anything of this nature, but,
Right, right. Um, yeah, that's a great question. There's like most children, I think, who have survived incest or trauma in the house. There's
Mhm,
parts of my childhood I recall and parts I don't recall, and
mhm, mhm.
years I can remember, and years I'm not quite so sure about. So I'm not exactly sure how to answer your question.
Sure.
Um, I was thinking about how a lot of what happened to me happened very early.
Mhm,
Um, and um, then there was sort of stuff with my brothers later. And then there was stuff when I was a teenager. So when you ask me
mm,
like where in development, it was sort of like all the way through.
right.
Um, I grew up really economically disadvantaged, or as I would say, like the poor girl. I loved church because I got fed.
Mm,
Um, but I didn't always know if the lights were going to be on. I didn't
mhm,
always know if there was going to be food in the house. Everything was very sort of unstable growing up that way.
mhm,
Um, and I'm not saying that contributed to the incest that I survived, but I am saying that when there is economic instability, um, many individuals in the house sometimes end up living as if they are roommates or
mhm,
living their own lives, right? So my
right.
mom did the best she could. I do not blame her at all. She worked all the time,
Uh-huh.
right, to keep the lights on when she could.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. Thank you. I appreciate that. So how do you believe incest changed the way your mindset was as a child? So if all these things are happening to you as a child, how did that affect the way you thought growing up? And you'd mentioned this, right? Because we don't have any baseline to compare this to as a child to say, oh, that's trauma that just happened to me 5 minutes ago. You really have no idea. So at what point, I guess, did you start to notice that this isn't right, or this is different, or how did that even impact you growing up?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I think mindset is such a funny word. I love the word mindset. Like when I'm talking to my teenagers, and I'm like, all right, are we going to have a growth mindset?
Mhm.
And I really feel like mindset is a very present term and a popular term, right? And so
Gotcha.
when I was little, we're talking like late 80s, early, yeah,
Mhm.
like late 80s.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and so mindset wasn't even like I didn't even know that there was a mindset as a
right.
kid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so I think what you're saying is like when I grew up, did I suddenly have a moment where I was like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
second, what? Right? I
Right.
think
Mm-hmm.
the way that it impacted me is I was very distrustful as a child, and
Ah,
I was very cautious as a child.
yeah.
And I was very out of my own body. Like, again,
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of yoga and writing and meditation to stay in my body,
I hear you.
because
Yes. Uh-huh.
in those moments of incest and surviving rape later, I just would leave my
Yeah.
body. And
Uh-huh.
so I've done a lot of work to sort of integrate all of the parts of myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think as a child, I just was kind of split, like, oh, this is happening to me. This is happening to a body in a bed.
Right.
And I would just kind
Disassociate.
of, yeah, I would just sort
Yeah.
of leave from that
Right.
experience.
Oh, wow.
Um, but that, again, that was in the past, you
Right.
know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you'd mentioned as well rape. So rape happening to you as well later on in life. Tell me what
yeah.
transpired and you don't have to go into all the details or anything, just whatever you're comfortable with speaking to, because I think there's a lot of rape victims out there who are still very quiet about their trauma and aren't speaking up. And I think that it's incredibly important that, if there's any knowledge or anything valuable that you can share, there's tons of people who are listening right now, and it's a great time to say whatever you
Yeah.
think is appropriate.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about with disassociation is, in a weird way,
Yeah.
that skill of being able to split the self from the self,
Mm-hmm.
or that habit, I don't know that I'd call it a skill, that
Mm, yeah.
that practice, maybe,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
that result, which became a practice, which became a habit,
Mm-hmm.
actually helped some in writing later, because I could be the self in terms of fiction and essays. I could be the
Mm-hmm.
self on the page, and then I could be the narrator telling the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So even though as
Yeah.
a child, the ability to disassociate
Mm,
came very early,
yeah.
and it's not something I would wish on someone else,
Exactly.
disassociation and compartmentalization
Mm-hmm.
became incredible strategic skills that I
Yeah.
used to then get myself out of that house, to
Yes.
then get myself through undergraduate and
Right.
graduate school and a
Mm-hmm.
doctorate, right? So sort of
Mm-hmm.
move forward. So that's one of the ways it impacted me. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking too about rape. The thing about rape is that I think some women don't even know that in the moment that a rape occurred. And I
Yeah.
don't mean like, oh, they drank too much or they didn't drink too much, because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's that famous woman, I'm just trying to think of her name. She was in, I want to say California, and she was assaulted and she was found behind a dumpster, and then they brought her to the hospital. And she has this great speech later. She wrote a book about it. I wish I could pull her name. It might come in a minute. And her
Okay.
speech is basically like, I don't give a damn. She's like, I
Uh-huh.
don't give a damn what you wore or didn't wear. I don't give a
Right.
damn what you texted or didn't text. I don't give a damn
Mm-hmm.
if you drank one beer or the whole bottle or nothing at all. I don't give
Mm-hmm.
a damn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really empowering speech, and I watch it a lot, which is why I'm like, why can't I think of her name?
Yeah.
And she's basically saying anything you did before the moment of being assaulted did not cause the assault.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything you did
Right.
the moment before an assault occurred
Mm-hmm.
did not
Mm-hmm.
cause the assault.
Yeah.
That, I think, is incredibly important, because after the assault, for those of us who realize, wait, shit, that was rape,
Yeah.
will often, at least me, be like, oh, what did I do? Was there too much? Like,
Right.
what did I
Right.
do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to have a conversation. Like, I have this great idea. Sorry, I get very excited about this. I
Yeah.
have this great idea that we could change or transform the conversation around sexual assault and
Mm-hmm.
move it to what happens before an assault.
Mm-hmm.
So many conversations are about this woman was raped, or this woman was gang raped, or this child was raped, or these
Mm-hmm.
women were raped.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we need to help them. And yes, the conversation needs to happen when the incident, after the incident occurs.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
if we could start talking to men.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if men could start talking to men.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying all rapists are men. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I am saying that we could have conversations about sexual assault before assault occurs.
Right. Yes.
In other words, we could have conversations about rape culture.
Mm-hmm.
We could have
Mm-hmm.
conversations about period shame, which is kind of the seed of rape culture,
Yeah.
right? If we started having those conversations about the female body being actually quite powerful and strong and fierce and encourage women to feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying we would stop rape. I'm
Yeah.
saying that empowerment
Mm-hmm.
might give us strength to
Mm-hmm.
have fierce conversations.
Yes.
But, there's this thing called capitalism and patriarchy that would
Mm-hmm.
prefer, sorry, I get very excited, I start talking with my
No,
hands, that would
you're
prefer
good.
we like bring it down,
Yeah.
right? And not
Mm-hmm.
talk about rape culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because in the same way that if you're in a room and you ask people, I'm sorry, do you think racism occurs? And they're like, yes, I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if if you ask a group of white people, does racism occur? Yes. Are
Mm-hmm.
any one of you racist? And they're like, no, right? And then they get all like uncomfortable. And that's a whole nother important conversation we need to have.
Mm-hmm.
There is
Mm-hmm.
a parallel. It's not the same. There is a parallel. If we said, is there rape culture to a group of men? And then we said, have any one of you crossed the line?
Mm.
Have any one of you done something without consent?
Right.
And they would be like, no, I hope not. I think not. Shit.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Right.
like, I want to inspire men to have conversations with men
Uh-huh.
about consent. I want to have consent conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Not just, oh my God, how can we support the woman? Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. We need to support the woman who was
Right.
raped.
Right. But it's too late at that point. So you're right. Address it before it becomes a problem.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. So, like, if I have a pretty shirt and you can see something on my shirt, right? That doesn't mean I'm asking for rape. So maybe have that conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
Have the
Mhm.
objectification kind of conversation,
Yes. Uh-huh.
right? If women were seen as intellectual beings
Mm-hmm.
and not only objects,
Right.
if we change that conversation, change that idea that I'm an intellectual human being, that you are a human being and not just an object of desire,
Mm-hmm.
then we might begin to
Mm-hmm.
get at this thing called rape culture. But
Yeah.
lots of people don't even, they don't want to talk about rape culture. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, no, I'm not. That's, shh.
Yeah.
Shh. No,
Yeah. No shushing here.
pushing
No.
here. I'd love to actually read a poem that's sort of
Okay.
connected to that.
Yeah.
That's more kind of a personal poem. The
Okay.
thing about surviving so many moments of assault is there are different spaces where I feel more
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable than in others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in those spaces, I have to remember this is 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a grown ass woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 12. I'm not
Yeah.
14, right? Um,
Yeah.
I don't need to stop talking. I can
Uh-huh.
actually talk,
Yes.
right? Because that's one of the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
Um, I hate this sentence, but the first time I was raped, afterwards, I came home.
First time.
I know, I hate that sentence, right?
Oh my
But the
gosh.
first time I was raped, I came home, I took a shower. I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out why a Christian boy at a Christian event had done that to me in the back of his truck.
Mm.
What I had done, what did I say? Was it my shirt? Did I
Right.
what did I do?
Self-blame. Yeah.
Right. And then I just stopped talking.
Oh.
And my mom was like, is something wrong? And is she in a bad mood? And it went on for days. But I didn't have
No
words
voice. Yeah.
to say, that was fucked up.
Yeah.
I just knew that I felt like sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh. So I want to read a poem about that that's connected to that idea of, and I say this for like women who are listening. I've been through a lot of counseling,
Mm-hmm.
and there are still moments where I go, okay, wait, it's 2021, or
Mm-hmm.
wait, I'm grown, right?
Right. Right.
So memory is beautiful, but also memory
Yeah.
sometimes feels like a trap door.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you.
So this is called the dentist, and that's one of those places where I start to feel more vulnerable. And it took me a while to really remember it's really about being on my back, my
Mm,
head back,
mm,
right? And my feet sort of more in the air. That
mhm.
physical position makes me uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow.
The dentist. What is it about the needle, the padding in the mouth, the wild, untamed tongue, the metallic smell of cement, the tar, the drill, the masked woman demanding breathe, the chills, the vacuum sucker, the bite down here a little more, a little longer, that turns to a yellow sky afternoon when my brothers bound my pudgy arms to wooden posts, cranked my mouth open, and collected $1 from every neighborhood boy who would jam himself down to my tonsils. How they begged me to swallow. How my brothers gave me an Indian burn every time I bit. How short the line from jaw to pelvis. How even now I am in the chair and on the ground watching.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's from What Enters the Mouth, which is the second book that is really about all the moments of sexual assault that I have
Mhm.
survived. So if I go to the dentist, I take the day. I'm like, going to the dentist, taking the day,
Yeah.
right? And I just do a lot of meditation and yoga and being present in my body. And I've said to the dentist, like, look, this freaks me out. So if I
Right.
tell you I need to stop and we need to take a break, we're going to stop. I need to take a break.
Oh my
If I
gosh.
tell you, like, no, I need to sit up, right? Like, I don't want to be
Yep.
in this vulnerable position, then
Mhm.
that's important for me too.
Now, does this impact you on whether you're choosing a male dentist versus a female dentist or hygienist?
Mm, not usually. Um, again, I've done a lot of like
Right.
therapy work, and
Mhm.
I've had successful relationships, both with men and with women.
Mhm.
I have fallen in love with people. So I have, in that sense, I wouldn't say worked through it 100%,
Right.
but I have worked through a lot of it.
A lot.
But,
Yes.
but I am slow to trust. I am cautious,
Right.
right?
I hear you.
I watch people's actions. I watch when they ask permission or ask for consent and when they don't.
Mm.
I don't just mean sexually. Like, I had a new doctor this week and she was like, is it okay if I touch your lymph nodes? Is
Mhm.
it okay if, and I was like, oh my God, she's
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Right.
And just that really gentle, like, is this all right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's good. That's
You
really
know,
good.
I've had male doctors who are like, and so now I'm going to, and I'm like, wait, hold on,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, that's a great doctor you have, by the way. And I think a lot of physicians and if advanced practice nurse practitioners and PAs lack that skill set. So I hope that if anybody's watching this or hearing this, they take that into consideration because even as and for me, going to a gynecologist, something as I am going to touch you and my fingers will be cold, but
Yes.
again, nobody's asked me. Clearly, I'm here for this exam,
Right.
but
Right.
but
Right.
still, just the asking is very
Yes. Yes.
very considerate and very professional, and I think that's important. Especially, I'm not sure if they see your profile and know that you were once a victim, and
Yeah.
therefore they knew to be more attentive. But I think in general, across the board, we should all start practicing like this in healthcare, and that's really important.
I agree. I think there's a huge difference of saying, can I slide the speculum in?
Mm-hmm.
Can I touch your leg right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you like and also like walking you through it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yes, I
one of the
appreciate
things
that.
for me with
Yeah.
healthcare is if the doctor's like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do this, and then there's going to be this thing, and then it's going to feel this way, and then there are bandages here. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think when you survive this much assault, you have a different relationship to surprises.
Yeah.
I love them. I love different kinds of romantic surprises, but I
Mhm.
don't want surprises in like healthcare settings or in
Right.
other kinds of
Yeah.
one-on-one sort of moments. Sometimes
Right.
surprises are harder
Yeah.
for
Wow. So that's and I work I specialize in pediatrics. And so everything that I felt like as a pediatric nurse, even though there are times where I'm caring for older kids who understand what I'm saying and they comprehend, and there are times when I'm caring for babies. And so regardless whether you are a 17-year-old in that patient's bed or you are a 7-day-old in an incubator, I will approach everything the same way. I am very cautious, even to a NICU baby in an incubator. I go in and I introduce myself, and I don't, I've seen some nurses just go in and they prop those doors open and they stick their hands in the isolate and then they start, doing all these things. And then, no wonder your baby's flipping out in there. They don't like that. It's just, you caught them off by surprise. And can you just at least like say, hi, I'm here. It's time for time. And introduce yourself. And I think I'm pretty good about making sure I do that. And so I appreciate that you bring this up because that's really important for anybody who handles and interacts with patients and just even in general in public. I think there are very many ways and situations where you can find yourself, even maybe in an academic setting with a teacher who, maybe needs to put his hand or her hands on their shoulder or something like that. And I've even had where like, if they're setting an example and they're using like not necessarily human anatomy, but just making an example, like I touch Dr. Jefferis, and so may I place my hand on your shoulder? And I've had teachers do that as well. And so it's like, I think it's so appropriate that we just announce what we're getting ready to do next.
Yes, I do too. Because then it doesn't feel so shocking, right? And it also doesn't feel so creepy, right? Yeah. Like that's the thing about rape and assault is that there's a real sort of like creepy element to it, of being in someone's personal space and being that sort of close to them.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So I just have one more like heavy topic, but when we met during our meet and greet, you mentioned a story about an Episcopal priest, and I just want you to share what you're willing to share, what you're able to share. But I think it's also another incredible learning moment for those of us who don't understand, or for those of us who think we're in that type of situation again, or maybe our children and our daughters and sons are in that type of situation. So I think it's an incredible lesson to learn from what you've got to say about this next topic.
Oh, thank you. Because I survived incest as a child and rape as a teenager, it did not seem like assault when the married Episcopal priest kissed me in a parking lot after a conference in Montana. It actually felt to my sort of 14-year-old self that he saved me.
Wow.
And I thought I was grown. And I also thought that I could give consent at 14. Right? I genuinely did. And I never, ever, ever thought of myself as a victim, right? I felt chosen because I was fed. I was offered a place to study outside of the house I was growing up in. So my brother's friends couldn't reach me, right? So my brother couldn't make money off sort of offering me to his friends.
Yeah.
So it seemed like I was good. I was like, and I remember specifically thinking, thank you, God, I don't have to be in this house all the time, right? And I could stop hitchhiking to Virginia Beach and DC. And the priest invited me to a Bible study and a youth group. And he made me leader of a confirmation class. And I was given money for babysitting his daughter. And I love his daughter, like even now. And this priest was the first man to tell me I had potential, to tell me I could be a writer, to tell me I could get out of Virginia, to tell me that I could go to school, right? Wow. Like with all of the stuff happening in the household, I struggled in school. And it's grace of God that I have the word doctor in front of me, right? Because I was not expected to go anywhere past high school. And I did really well in English class. And I went to a theater class where I did really well. And that's what I did. The rest of my grades were like not even great.
It's irrelevant right now. It doesn't even matter.
But He was the one who gave me Auden poems and Dickinson and said, oh, you can read well? Let's talk about this poem, right? So there were time and time again where we would just talk about literature. I didn't know I was being groomed, right? He would say to me, lay your sleeping head, my love, human on my faithless arm. That's Auden, right? And I would be like, oh, that's an interesting poem, but I didn't think he was talking to me.
Yeah.
Right? And then he wrote poems for me and said I was the beloved of God. And he saw that I was failing algebra and said, we're going to get you an algebra teacher. And it was, the late 80s, right? So I learned about the AIDS quilt. And he gave me a book on liberation theology. And he taught me social justice. And he said, okay, now we're going to go make sandwiches for people who are hungry. And he wrote oh my gosh, he wrote a dialogue sermon for us to give in church together.
Oh, wow.
Right? Which blew people's minds in the church that I grew up in, which is an Episcopal church. And here's the thing. The first time, and I don't know what word here to use, right? And I love words.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we had sex in his house, I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
He was 25 years older than me.
Oh my gosh. And married.
And married. It didn't feel like rape. He was gentle. More gentle than my brother's friends. More gentle than my stepfather. Gentle. And I made an agreement with myself out of fear that this assault, rape experience would be quiet. Right? Because I had grown up in a house with secrets. And he knew that.
Oh.
He knew everything that I had grown up with.
Wow.
Right? And so when I was 18 and completely brainwashed and groomed, I thought he would leave his wife and marry me.
Wow. So almost 4 whole years.
Oh, it went past that. He showed me houses. He talked of rings. He said, we were going to go to college. This is where you're going to go. He took me on vacation while I was at college. He prayed with me. He prayed over me. And I understood that he was the closest one to God.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And I also thought, mistakenly, that I couldn't have God without him.
Oh my gosh.
And when I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
so that's 7 years, 14 to 21, 7 years.
Sounds right.
Yeah. I was standing on a bridge in Virginia Beach, and he broke it off and said, I'm done. And again, I stopped talking because I wanted to die. Because I had only seen my non-frontal lobe developed life, right? I'd only seen my child brain as his wife.
Yeah.
And as a writer, right? That's what I thought I was going to do. And so instead of dying, and I came close to it a couple of times, I decided to write poems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And literally, there have been moments where I have written poems instead of jumping off of a bridge.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I have written poems instead of drinking the bottle of vodka with the Advil. So it has not been easy. And I've done a lot of work. And for the women who are really struggling with rape, pick up a pencil. Really, pick up a pencil, pick up a pen, start writing.
Yeah.
If I could talk a minute, I'm not sure about how much time we have, but I want to
talk about You're good.
One writing exercise that that I've worked with clients and students and I do often, that has really saved my life. And you write in 3 points of view, and it's a reflective journal writing exercise. So it's not just like journaling, but it's really thinking and critiquing. And the first one, you write what happened to you in first person point of view.
Okay.
Right. And this is also connected to this amazing article called The Efficacy of Journal Writing in Assisting Survivors. And it's from Claire Creeley. And it's a process that actually moves post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. So the first time you write what happened to you. So I might say, I was 14 and standing in a parking lot, and this Episcopal priest kissed me.
Mm.
And there was a full moon. And I felt awkward and chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And this was familiar because old men always kissed me.
Yeah.
Right? So I might write that whole thing down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that for a minute. I had to think about it. Like the
Yeah.
idea that older men have always kissed me. I was like, damn. So
Mm.
I might write about that. Even now, like I've done that exercise like 10 times. And now I get like, oh, older men. Okay. So you might write that out. And then the second time you write a letter to your dearest friend. And I might say, Dear Stephanie, I am sorry that you were 15 years old in a parking lot and a man who was 25 years older than you kissed you. He was
Mm-hmm.
married. It was wrong. You
Yeah.
didn't do anything. You didn't give him permission to kiss you. You didn't say no. You didn't have to say no. He still wasn't the one. He still wasn't right to kiss you. He was
Right.
an adult. You
Yeah.
were a child, right?
Yeah.
And I love you, right? In the second one, you write it to this friend of like, damn, I'm so angry for you and I love you and I'm sorry that happened,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
Same story, the same narrative, but the first time it's in first person point of view. So you own the shit that happened. The second, you write to your friend. And third, you write as if it was an event. So I
Mm-hmm.
might say, in the late 80s, I'm trying to remember when I was 15,
Right.
late 80s, early 90s, there was a girl standing in a parking lot, and a man who was 25 years older than her pulled her hair back and kissed her.
Oh.
She was terrified.
Wow.
And the reason that you do it in those 3 points of view, first,
Uh-huh.
second, and third, it's because you don't just relive the event and become re-traumatized, because that's never the game, ever,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, but that you write it out so that it becomes a story of your life,
Mm-hmm.
but not the story.
Right.
And when we
Wow.
write out those painful experiences, we actually activate the amygdala, which is like the smoke detector of the
Mm-hmm.
emotions,
Yes.
and the frontal lobe, which I
Okay.
think of as like the watchtower.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we activate the emotion and the container where the emotion was created. If we
Mm.
just did first person point of view, we would only be acting out the emotion, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it would just be
Mm-hmm.
recall.
Yeah.
And it allows us to have an opportunity to sort of regulate from top down to bottom up,
Mm-hmm.
strengthen the watchtower, to monitor emotions, to recalibrate the automatic nervous system. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you know all of this in your nurse practitioner work.
Mm-hmm.
But there really is a powerful brain chemical reaction to reflective journal writing.
Right.
And neuroscience, because I read neuroscience for fun,
Yeah.
actually,
Me too, girl.
yeah. But I'm reading it because I want to know like what happens in the brain in the moment of what happens in the brain when women are
Right.
healing. So
Yeah.
neuroscience argues that that kind of introspection allows us to access the emotional brain and repair the faulty alarm system.
Mm.
And I would say that it's one modality, reflective journal writing is one modality to make a needlepoint move towards healing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And one needlepoint move
Mm-hmm.
is huge. It's a
Yeah.
win,
Yeah, it
right?
is huge.
So the priest kissed me.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, dear friend, a priest kissed you. And there was a girl who was kissed by a priest. By
Mm-hmm.
the time I get to number 3, it is an event that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
That is a part of my journey,
Yeah.
but it's not the only thing,
Right.
right? Like I'm also a mama who had 2 babies successfully
Mm-hmm.
after 3 days of Pitocin
Mm.
and preeclampsia, right?
Wow.
They were huge babies and it was crazy. Like I'm
Yeah.
also that mama. I'm also
Uh-huh.
the mama who got a PhD. I'm also the mama who's an author. I'm not just the girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's something about the second and third person point of view that
Right.
allows us to integrate the girl to ourself,
Yeah.
but not only have real estate in that one experience.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
And
Thank you.
that, I think, is the illusion of trauma, is that it acts as if it's the only story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's true. I think a lot of women that I've talked to and men who have encountered trauma, no matter what type of trauma, I think it becomes their central, storyline, and they live it, they breathe it, but they're never able to triumph past it. And I think that's this reflective journal writing and the information that you just shared is so incredibly important in any aspect, really. But this is incredible. This is incredible
Oh,
stuff.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
And resilience is hard. It's not something I just like did and got, and I was like, yeah, one and done. I'm good. I'm resilient.
Hmm.
I have a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
The idea that someone who is 25 years older would
Hmm.
kiss her
Hmm.
makes me want to vomit. It
Hmm.
also makes me a weird kind of mama bear,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I've done work on like fixing my faulty alarm system,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I am cautious.
Yeah.
I am very cautious.
Right.
And my girls know that. They know that I'm trying to protect them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Um, and I am cautious about boundaries, and they must have very good boundaries. We talk a
Right.
lot about boundaries in the
Okay.
house.
So you've told your stories to the girls, and
Um, Parts,
okay.
not everything.
Right.
They know, oh, mama survived rape.
Uh-huh.
They know, oh, my oldest, mama had a strange relationship with a priest.
Mm.
Relationship doesn't even feel like the right word, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't know everything.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, Partly because I think they're not quite ready.
Right. Yeah.
They've read a poem or two. My oldest has read a poem or two.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. But I'm also very like, I work towards having them feel strong in their bodies, right?
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
didn't feel strong in my body until I was an adult.
Yeah.
So if they feel strong in their bodies and they breathe and they have the tools of meditation and
Mhm.
the tools of journaling and the
Mhm.
tools of calming themselves
Yes.
down,
Yeah.
that may help them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, thank you, for sharing all of that. It's just it baffles me that I don't know, that one person can go through so much and still be so incredibly you and here and sharing this with a
Yeah.
smile on your face, and just thank you. Like it's always
Oh.
I don't know what to say anymore. I'm
No,
lost for
it's
words.
okay.
But so you said at 21 you learned to start journaling, and that was really the first time you started putting pen to paper. And can you just kind of speak to more of
Yeah.
how writing has helped you?
Yeah. I think I want to sort of pull that back a little bit.
Yeah.
21 is when I was doing reflective journal writing, when I was thinking like,
Gotcha. Okay.
okay, I'm not going to be married to a priest.
Yeah.
But I've always been writing, like,
Yes. Okay.
since I
Okay.
was very little.
Okay.
Um, I grew
That
up
makes
in
more sense.
two churches.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I just meant like reflective journal writing and critical writing around it, and then reading
Yeah.
it and thinking about point of view and shaping it.
Yeah.
That happened when I was in high school, and then more so in college. I went
Okay.
to a women's school. I went to Holland's. It's
Hmm.
800 women. That is another place where someone said, "Hey, you're a writer," and I
Hmm.
went, "Really?" Right?
Yeah.
um, so, but even before college, when in high school, I was writing.
Yeah.
And even before that, when I was little at church, I was writing. So I
Hmm.
have always found the pen or the pencil
Hmm.
as a place to tell a story that was different than what was happening.
Hmm.
So it was a place that I could write myself home safely. So as
Hmm.
a kid, I would write stories where the lights were always on and no one had secrets and no one visited each other's rooms at
Hmm.
night. And everyone was believed, and those kinds of stories where you could rewrite what was happening,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
um, but I actually think that we can write ourselves asking for help or saying someone, like telling about what has trespassed against us,
Hmm.
before we can say it aloud, right?
Right.
Like the whole thing is that speak out, speak up. That's
Hmm.
really the heart of the Me Too movement.
Right.
And I think, what if you can actually, right? Like I told you, there are several times in my life when I have stopped speaking.
Yeah.
The first time that I was raped, stopped speaking. When I was in college and I had a friend who was murdered, stopped speaking.
Mm-hmm.
At other people's lives when their lives have ended, in that relation, that sort of the unexpected deaths, just stopped. So I definitely think that we can write, that the writer's mind that lives inside all of us can help us write what we need to say before we can say it.
Mm-hmm.
I can go back to the journals of when I was 5 and 7 and 12 and 15 and 18 and 21, and my subconscious mind, my writer's mind, knew truth before I could say it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Yeah.
my hand is sometimes smarter than my brain, or
Yeah.
at least more honest.
Right. Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
again, for the women who are suffering from rape and are like, I can't tell. I don't have anyone to tell. If I tell, I won't be believed.
Uh-huh. Right.
Okay, write it.
Right.
Right? Because then at least you're getting it out of your body
Yeah.
and not keeping it in.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Right? The harder we try to hold things in, the theory is that it goes sideways, that it
Right.
comes out
Yeah.
another way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And and I think, as you were saying, when you write and you're more honest on paper, I think it really just kind of comes down to like we feel like that's our safe space. Nobody's going to read this, or we assume that nobody will be reading this. And so we write what we truly feel, as opposed to speaking it out. And, I may tell you a sugar-coated story, but not the entirety of the truth. Whereas I would be putting the entire truth on paper. And
Yeah.
so I think that's incredibly important, and having that tool. And I've always been a huge like diary journaling type person. I haven't done enough of that in the past, I don't know, decade or two, but I appreciate like just the process that goes into it when we put our heart and soul into that. And I look back and I read my journals and diaries from when I was little, and just the way I thought was so much deeper than I could have imagined. Looking back, I say, oh my gosh, I was only 8 years old in that. And I'm thinking this deeply about how my mom reacted to a situation, and it's just like, wow, I was like incredibly intelligent, but I was just like putting everything on there because I felt safe. Like it was my safe space. That's where it's going. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of therapeutic benefits to
Mm-hmm.
being able to write it down. And so why don't you go ahead and, I mean, you've shared a few of your poems, and I would love to start getting into your books and your what you're doing with all of that now, how you've turned
Yeah.
your pain into purpose.
Yeah. Thank you. So my most recent book is What Enters the Mouth.
Mhm.
And by recent, I'm saying like 2017, 2018. And it's a collection of poems that sort of work through those moments of sexual assault and resilience.
Okay.
Before that was Forgetting the Salt, which was 2008, which was one of my graduate degrees, like thesis
Okay.
collections from that.
Mm.
And as I said before, I'm the CEO of Right Now. So a lot of clients that I have are
Mhm.
either women who have suffered assault, or they are women who are wanting to write about a trauma and
Mm.
not re-traumatize themselves,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And so we will spend time writing poems or writing essays or working through the journal writing that they've done, to really begin to tell the story
Yeah.
and also reclaim their bodies,
Yes.
right? There's an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that book.
No, I'm not
Oh my
familiar.
gosh, it's so phenomenal. It's like,
Yeah.
"Ah!" Yeah, it's The Body Keeps the Score. And
I'll
it
have to look
basically
into it for
says
sure.
the body remembers
Uh-huh.
all of the things that have occurred to us.
Mm.
And I think of writing, the kind of writing that I do with clients, the kind of writing that I do by myself, as a somatic experience, right? Like
Mhm.
a similar thing to EMDR, like
Mhm.
a way of going back to the trauma and then moving through it, right?
Mhm.
I would never leave a client just in the sort of moment of trauma.
Yeah.
But I do ask people who I'm working with, if they're working on a poem or a story or an essay, and if it's an essay where they're including a traumatic experience, to be willing to share it honestly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they need to pull back and just put a few details in, they can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I do is I run workshops. And of
Okay.
course, before the world of COVID, they were in person. And
Right.
some of the workshops are genre focused, right?
Okay.
So I might get a bunch of people together and we're going to write poems. They
Mm-hmm.
might be fiction focused. But I often run workshops for women who are survivors of sexual assault.
Okay.
And we spend the day doing some prayer and meditation and yoga and writing about those experiences in order to leave the day stronger, and also in order to leave the experience that occurred to us on
Mm-hmm.
the page,
Okay. Yeah.
right? And not as the only story that we have.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So, like, you invited me on your show, and I love being on your show, and I definitely want to talk about resilience and strength and surviving assault. But I also have a PhD, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of amazing too.
It
So,
is.
right,
Yeah.
like, and I also have an MFA from Cornell, and I would
Yeah.
love to talk about like upstate New York. So, I have other stories.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
work with clients to say, why do we start with that trauma story,
Yeah.
um, and how can we move through it,
Mm-hmm.
not ever forgetting it.
Right.
Right? I
Right.
can't forget it.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember still. I can remember still. Do you remember parachute pants?
Yeah.
And I can remember like the coins in my brother's friend's pocket that he
Oh.
pulled out and gave to my brother. And the conversation they had about, well, what can I do with your sister for this? Like, I can't forget that. Right? And I know that's crazy. I can't
Yeah.
forget that. But
Yeah.
that's not my only story.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I have other stories
You
too.
do. You do.
Right? Um, And I want to empower women
Mm-hmm.
to be present in their bodies through writing
Mm-hmm.
and believe that healing is possible, even if it's
Yes.
like a needle point
Exactly.
step at the time,
Yep. That's all it takes.
right?
Moving in the right direction.
Um,
Yeah.
so thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Of course, absolutely. So let's just, let's talk about who Dr. Sarah Jefferis is today, where you are, what you're doing outside of those incredible books of poetry that you've done so far. You're doing
Yeah.
a lot of things. You're a
Yeah,
doctor, you have a PhD. Let's talk about
I
you.
do.
Let's celebrate who you are.
I have a PhD in writing from SUNY Binghamton. I have an MFA in poetry from Cornell. I have an MA from Hollins, which is a women's school, and a bachelor's degree from Hollins. So if there's any women out there who believe in women's education, yes, I would
Okay.
be happy to talk to you about single sex education and why it's important.
Oh,
Um, I'm in upstate New York, where today it was maybe 10 degrees,
nice.
which was not fun,
Yeah.
and freezing and snowing. But, we
Hmm.
had vegetable soup, and I take care of my two girls.
Hmm.
One of my highest callings is to raise two feminist young women to
Yes.
believe in themselves and
Yes.
to believe in their bodies.
Yeah.
I'm getting yoga certified training,
Ah,
which is
love
I
it.
love, and it's also
Love it.
hard as
Right.
so
Lots of hours.
lots of
Lots,
hours.
lots of
It's
hours.
200 hours of yoga, and it
Yeah.
is the time where you are on the mat. But it's
Yeah.
also meditation and breathing
Okay. Yeah.
and the history of yoga. And I believe in meditation, especially in the middle of all this COVID pandemic madness.
Mm-hmm.
Some days are a 2-day meditation where you need to meditate in the morning and then you need to meditate in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But I do believe in stillness. And I
Abs-
do believe in that quiet.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing yoga training, if I'm working on a particular position, I'm very present in my body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That means I'm present in a body that has survived trauma and
Yes.
present in a strong body.
Yeah.
Both are true,
Wow. Yeah.
right? That
Yes.
doesn't mean that after yoga, I'm not super excited to like watch something on Netflix or read neuroscience, right? Like I'm super of the brain, right? So I
Yeah.
get very excited
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
being present in my body, and then I need to sort of come out of that
Mm-hmm.
and do
Mm-hmm.
something that's highly intellectual or very silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would
Yeah.
say about
Oh, very nice. Very nice. But I know you also have a very passionate side too, about your role as an American white woman, so I want to get this right, who to dismantle white supremacy and patriarchy
Yes.
and
Oh my
attempt to
gosh.
change a 400-year-old culture.
Yes. So, okay, all of the crazy shit that happened to me happened
Mhm.
in Virginia, in a
Mm.
town called Colonial Williamsburg, where
Know that town.
everyone recreated colonial culture.
Oh,
So first, yeah,
I see the connection.
as in
Oh my gosh.
costume,
Uh-huh.
walking around, pretending
Reenactments.
they were British
Yeah.
and pretending that it was the 18th century.
Oh my God.
That's where I grew up. So very early, I had the sense that like colonial history was important and whacked as fuck, right? Like I was trying to figure it out, like
Which one is it?
what's happening here. And
Yeah.
when I was younger, I grew up in two churches, the white church and the black church. I grew up in both communities. And
Nice.
when I was younger, I remember that the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation would reenact, and this is the crazy shit,
Oh
reenact
no. Please don't
slave.
go there. I know where you're going.
They would reenact slave auctions. And I
Oh
do
my
not mean because
God.
it makes it better or worse that they would beat someone in public, but they
Uh-huh.
would stand next to someone and talk about some person of color and talk about their teeth and how much they're worth. And I thought, as a 8 and 9-year-old girl running
Mhm.
away from the incest, this is crazy as shit. Like
Yeah.
I would run out of my house and be like, what? Right? And I was so appalled. I was
Yeah.
so appalled.
Yeah.
And I was
Oh
trying
my
to figure
God.
out like why my one Sunday school teacher was talking about the cost of the teeth of my other Sunday school teacher. Like I was trying to figure out why are adults doing that?
Oh
And
my
the
God.
slave auction reenactments ended when I was somewhere around 11 or 12. So like somewhere later there. But I had a really early understanding of the importance of social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the gifts that I would say my mom gave me. And she would say, you have all this privilege as a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with it? Right. And
Right.
so one of the other things that I'm, deeply passionate about is having the hard conversations about race. And my
Mm.
God, we just had the crazy people run up the Capitol, and we have Kamala, right? So we have things
Mm-hmm.
to celebrate in January, but the Wednesdays of January have been kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was, I think, the first somewhat calm Wednesday of
It's
January.
full moon today, so.
It's a full moon today, so there we go. So I deeply believe as a white woman, it is my responsibility to break the 400-year-old habit of systemic racism.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't just mean like, oh, I need to speak out if I see something that's unjust. That
Mm-hmm.
means that I need to be aware of my privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be aware of what my privilege has given me.
Right.
I need to look next to me and bring up a person who may not have that privilege.
Yep. Yep.
And I need to know what to give up
Mm-hmm.
when it's offered to me so that I am interested in sharing power. People
Yes.
talk about let's make change, let's make change. Can we have change?
Mm-hmm.
Change is when we start redistributing power.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's white people's responsibility to redistribute some of that power among
Yeah.
all the people of color in the state.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right? And so it's not just any moment that I might see that's unjust in Ithaca. It's
Right.
not just any moment that I might feel is unjust as a child. But it's
Mm-hmm.
when I'm like a visiting faculty member. Do I have diverse texts? Do I have diversity in the classroom? Am I
Mm-hmm.
willing to talk about diversity? Am I willing to ask white people what they're doing around diversity and issues
Mm-hmm.
of power? Right? And
Yeah.
what are they willing to give up?
Right.
Right? Because it is not people of color's responsibility to school us on racism or to eradicate it. It's
Mm-hmm.
our habit. It's our disease.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
our disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I raised two girls, asking them that same question. What are
Mm-hmm.
you going to do with your privilege, girls?
Yeah.
Where have you seen inequity? I'm going to bring you now to the protest and we're going to see what this is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to read this. But white
Right.
people can't just, white people, myself too, can't just be like, well, I'm going to read. We do need to read. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, we need to read. We need to read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we also need to be willing to have powerful conversations
Yep.
around race with
Right.
each other.
Yeah.
And we need to know when to shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot of white women in power
Mm-hmm.
who don't know when to shut up.
Right.
And have they asked
Yeah.
themselves, have I ever had a friend of color who I might also want this leadership position?
Right.
Have I ever asked them what it felt like for them?
Yeah. Wow.
So that's sort of the piece that I'm also deeply passionate about, doing diversity and equity work.
Yes, yes, same as well. So same to me as well. And I'm all about making sure that, as a leader in healthcare, that I always have a very diverse group. Do I have diverse representation? Not because it's all colors or all race, but I want fantastic skill sets, still be able, I still want the skill set, I still want everything, but I want diversity. If I have a white candidate versus a black candidate or a Hispanic or an Asian, and they all have equal skill set, I'm sorry, but I might just lean towards the diversity aspect of it, because I want my team to come from different backgrounds, to have different insights. I don't want a homogenous team.
Yes.
And so I want everything to just be, everybody to learn to love and be united and do things together,
Yes.
but gosh, wow. So is there like a black person standing there in Williamsburg just allowing all of that, like,
Isn't that craziness?
yes.
There was. And then there were, of course, protests about it. And then, the foundation stopped it immediately.
Yeah.
Right. But I had a really, that was my first understanding of race as a kid. And I was, very confused about why that was happening. The other thing I was going to say, and then I don't know if we're almost running out of time, is that I think if we're going to talk about what conversations we need to have, we really need to ask, how willing are we to make peace with difference?
Mm-hmm.
Can we make peace with someone who has a different skin color? Can we make peace with a different ableism, different language, different religion?
Right.
Can we make peace with difference?
Yes.
And can we make peace with our own bodies?
Yeah.
Because people will say, I'm good to accept the difference of the person over there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a harder time accepting the difference if it's in my own household.
Yep.
Right? So I think we need to make peace with our bodies and make peace with difference. And that also comes from this great book called The Body Is Not an Apology, which I would completely recommend.
Okay.
So thank you again.
I've got a whole list of books that I would like to read after this. So thank you. So
you're welcome.
Dr. Jefferis. So if I were to give you a billboard, what would it say?
Breathe.
Okay.
The universe is your sugar daddy. I don't know why. I wouldn't say that. That was just what occurred to me. Breathe. Grace.
Okay.
Try again.
Yes.
Breathe, grace, try again.
I love it. That's perfect. Very concise, straight to the point. Everybody understands it. Awesome. So sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Is there anything that I should have asked you that we did not discuss that you'd like to discuss?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Oh, maybe.
Sure.
If you walk into a room with 10 women, do not assume you are the only woman who's been assaulted. The ratio statistics show that at least 3 of those women have been assaulted. And you think it might be you and you're only alone.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Oh, wow. Wow. I'm going to have to look at things differently now. Yeah. That's crazy. In healthcare, it's nothing but women at the, not nothing, but it's a predominantly women-driven field. And so, we have 600 nurses at our hospital. Now you're making me do the math. Oh my gosh. No, you're not making me, but wow. There's definitely room for us to improve and ask and inquire and provide support.
Yeah. And I would love to talk to those 600 women about writing and reflection and how they've understood or processed their own experiences with trauma or patients.
Right. Yes. I mean, we have that too. We have I don't think the word is abuse. I don't want to label it incorrectly, but we do have very difficult patients. We have difficult families, and nurses do feel the impact, the emotional trauma as a result of that. And so we are losing nurses much quicker than usual because of compassion fatigue.
Right.
We already work in pediatrics where it's extremely stressful, but at the same time, we're also losing them because of everything else too. And then now we have COVID fatigue on top of that. So it's just a terrible time in general for everybody across the world.
Right.
All right. So where can our listeners find you if they'd like to contact you?
They can find me on the web at sarahjefferis.com.
Okay.
I was also thinking with compassion fatigue, they should write some of that out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You can find me on Clubhouse. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook.
Okay. I'll have to look for you on Clubhouse. I've been slightly too occupied with that. I'm driving to work. I'm driving home on my lunch break. It's just insane.
Clubhouse is amazing like that.
It is. It is really amazing. It's definitely a place for people who love to just share their stories and everything.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for your patience with all the issues that I had at the beginning, but I really appreciate you coming on to Comfort Kills today and sharing your story and just putting it out there to the world, and also sharing the knowledge that you have and what you have to offer the world as well. So thank you.
Thank you. 1,000 thank yous. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well.